Mark's motivation to learn English. Mark had always been an ambitious young man. He grew up in a small town where everyone knew each other and life moved at a steady pace. Mark was a dreamer, always imagining himself in different parts of the world. He dreamed of studying abroad, working in a global company, and traveling to places where people spoke English fluently. However, there was one major obstacle in his path. He struggled with learning English. Mark's journey with English began in school, just like for most people. From an early age, he was introduced to the language. But unlike other subjects that he found relatively easy to grasp, English seemed to always be a challenge. The grammar rules confused him, and the pronunciation felt strange. The vocabulary seemed endless, and he could never seem to remember all the words. In class, his teachers praised the other students for their fluency, but Mark often felt like he was falling behind. He would sit at his desk, staring at his English textbook, overwhelmed by the countless pages filled with strange symbols and rules. Every time the teacher asked a question, Mark would shrink in his seat, hoping not to be called on. He wanted to understand English, but it felt like the language was too complex and elusive. He knew that his future goals would require him to speak and understand English fluently, but the thought of ever reaching that level seemed impossible. Mark's frustration only deepened as he got older. He began avoiding situations where he would have to use English, even though he knew it would hold him back in the long run. The idea of speaking in front of others or trying to communicate with native English speakers terrified him. It wasn't that he lacked the desire to learn, it was simply that every attempt seemed to lead to failure. The dream of studying abroad, of working in an international company, and of living the life he had always imagined felt more and more out of reach. One day, Mark's father, who had always been a source of wisdom for him, noticed his struggle. "Mark," he said gently, "why are you so down lately? You've always been so driven, but lately, I see you getting discouraged by English. What's going on?" Mark sighed and looked at his father. "I just don't get it, Dad. I want to improve my English, but every time I try, it feels like I'm not getting any better. I can't speak like the others in my class. I can't remember all the words. And every time I try to listen to English podcasts or watch movies, I just get frustrated because I don't understand half of it. Maybe I'm not cut out for it." His father smiled kindly, setting down the newspaper he was reading. "I understand how you feel. But let me tell you something. Learning a new language is like climbing a mountain. It may seem difficult at first, but every step you take gets you closer to the top. And the key to climbing is not to rush. You need to take it one step at a time at your own pace." Mark looked at his father, still feeling doubtful. "But how do I do that, Dad? I've tried everything, and I just don't feel like I'm making any progress." His father thought for a moment, then replied, "Start small. Don't worry about being perfect. Focus on progress, not perfection. Find things you enjoy, and try to use English in those activities. And most importantly, don't give up." Those words resonated with Mark, but they didn't immediately solve his problems. He still felt overwhelmed by the sheer amount of work he thought it would take to become fluent. However, something inside him shifted that day. He realized that if he wanted to reach his dreams, he couldn't keep avoiding English. He would have to try again, this time with a new mindset, taking the first step. The next morning, Mark woke up with a new sense of determination. He decided to follow his father's advice and start small. He didn't have to master the language all at once. Instead of worrying about grammar rules or vocabulary lists, he would focus on activities that felt less daunting and more enjoyable. He began with something simple, listening to English music. Mark had always loved music, so it was an easy way to start. At first, he only understood a few words here and there, but he enjoyed the rhythm and melody. He picked a few of his favorite songs and listened to them on repeat, trying to catch the words and phrases. Slowly, he started to understand more and more. Eventually, he found himself singing along, even if he didn't know every word. Listening to English music felt like a fun way to get used to the sounds of the language without the pressure of strict rules. Next, Mark decided to watch English TV shows. He started with something light and funny, like a sitcom. The characters spoke quickly, and he didn't understand everything, but he began to notice that there were certain phrases he could pick up. He turned on the subtitles in English so that he could follow along and connect the words to the spoken sentences. The more he watched, the more he realized that English wasn't as intimidating as it once seemed. Mark also found that watching TV shows helped him improve his listening skills. He started by watching short clips and gradually increased the length as his comprehension improved. It felt less like studying and more like a fun way to learn. Building confidence. As the weeks went by, Mark noticed small improvements. He began to feel more confident when speaking English in class. Although he still made mistakes, he no longer felt paralyzed by the fear of failure. One day, when his teacher asked him to read a passage aloud, Mark surprised himself by getting through it more smoothly than he had expected. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. And for the first time, he felt proud of that. Mark also made a point to learn new words every day. He carried a small notebook with him and wrote down interesting phrases or new vocabulary from the songs, TV shows, or books he read. He would study them for a few minutes each day, making sure to practice using them in his own sentences. The more he practiced, the more confident he became in his ability to use English in everyday situations. Although he still had a long way to go, Mark realized that the key to learning English wasn't about being perfect, it was about progress. He started to embrace his mistakes and view them as opportunities to grow. Overcoming challenges. One day, Mark received an email that both excited and terrified him. A prestigious university in the United States had invited him to apply for a scholarship program. He had dreamed of studying abroad for years, and this was the opportunity he had been waiting for. But there was a catch: he would need to pass an English proficiency test as part of the application process. At first, Mark felt overwhelmed. The thought of taking a test on something he still struggled with made him anxious. But then he remembered the advice his father had given him: focus on progress, not perfection. Mark decided to take the challenge head-on. He reviewed his English skills, practiced speaking with his friends, and took mock tests online. Every day, he pushed himself a little more. The weeks leading up to the test were difficult. Mark felt moments of self-doubt and frustration. There were days when he wanted to give up. But with each day, he noticed small improvements. He could understand the test materials better, and his confidence grew. On the day of the test, he walked into the exam room feeling nervous, but also proud of how far he had come. The results. Weeks later, Mark received an email. He had passed the English proficiency test with high marks, and his scholarship application had been accepted. His dream of studying abroad was no longer just a dream, it was a reality. The feeling of accomplishment was overwhelming. Mark thought back to those early days when he had struggled with English, feeling like it was an impossible mountain to climb. But now, standing on the other side of that challenge, he realized that the journey had been worth every step. A new outlook on learning. Mark's experience with learning English taught him many valuable lessons. He learned that progress isn't always immediate or linear, it requires patience and persistence. He learned that mistakes were a natural part of the process, and that they didn't define his abilities. Most importantly, he learned that with consistent effort and a positive mindset, anything is possible.
As he prepared for his studies abroad, Mark knew that this was only the beginning. He still had much to learn, but now, he had the confidence to continue his journey. The future was full of possibilities, and Mark was ready to face whatever came next, knowing that he had the power to achieve his dreams. Conclusion. Mark's story is one of perseverance, self-belief, and the importance of taking small steps toward a big goal. He faced many obstacles along the way, but his determination to improve and his willingness to embrace the process made all the difference. Learning English wasn't easy, but it was worth every effort. And in the end, Mark's success wasn't just about mastering a language, it was about discovering the strength within himself to overcome challenges and pursue his dreams. Mark's journey serves as a reminder that with the right mindset, anyone can achieve their goals, no matter how impossible they may seem at first.